Racial tension is enormous on many campuses. The colleges themselves try to say that they're victims of the racism of the larger society. And in point of fact, the racism on the campuses is greater than that in the larger society, in many campuses. And what I worry about is that they're going to graduate into the general society, blacks and whites alike, who hate each other's guts, and who can be the leaders of new racial strife. Well, the differences have always been there, but they got along before. I mean, blacks and whites were different at Harvard when I was there, but you didn't find all the black students huddled together at lunchtime at the end of some table, the way you do on many campuses today. All the black students I knew had white roommates, and I would say that the ones that I knew were all popular, other than me. But that's not the situation today.
So what's causing it?
The fact that you do have those little elites who have their agenda. It's the fact that the black students are forced to come out and do the demonstrations and the whatnot. The fact that you have students there who are tremendously alienated because they suddenly find themselves in this situation where academically it's all they can do to keep their noses above the water, if they can do that. And then there's someone there to tell them that this is all due to the white power structure. And then there are the white students who are sick of hearing that. And they say, if you can't hack it, that's your problem. Don't give us this junk. And then that's called insensitivity. It's self-reinforcing. You know, there are some reactions that are self-equilibrating, but there's some that keep feeding each other. Let's say an ugly racial incident happens on campus at one of the elite colleges. Invariably, the first thing that will be said is we must have now a larger quota of minority students, a larger quota of minority faculty, and we must now subject the white students to these sensitivity courses or ethnic courses or what have you, courses that they've rejected taking, otherwise they wouldn't be necessary to force them. That is not going to make things better, that's going to make them worse. But as they get worse, then you keep doing that, and so it's just an upward spiral, and I just don't know where that spiral is going to end. I don't see anybody with the courage to end it, and I see it leading only to bad things.
A staffer at Smith College has resigned, and she published a letter accusing the school of creating a racially hostile environment against white people. And for your reference, by the way, Smith College is an elite women's school in Massachusetts. Now, this staffer, her name is Jody Shaw, she used to be a student support coordinator at the college. However, she recently sent a resignation letter to the college's leadership saying that the environment left her physically and mentally debilitated. In the letter, she wrote that, "I can no longer work in this environment, nor can I remain silent about a matter so central to basic human dignity and freedom." Now, what exactly is she referring to? Well, in that letter, she said that the culture of the school had changed forcefully after a 2018 incident when a black student accused a white staffer of racism for calling college campus security on her. An investigation showed no evidence of racial bias, but the college put in place a list of initiatives aimed at fighting systemic racism on campus. However, based on the staffer's account, the ideology that was driving these efforts seemed more concerned about inflaming anti-white sentiment rather than mitigating any form of racism. Here's what she said in her letter. "I endured racially hostile comments and was expected to participate in racially prejudicial behaviors as a continued condition of my employment. I endured meetings in which another staff member violently banged his fist on the table, chanting rich white women," in reference to Smith alumni. "I listened to my supervisor openly name preferred racial quotas for job openings in our department. I was given supplemental literature in which the world's population was reduced to two categories, dominant group members and subordinated group members, based solely on characteristics like race." Now, in that same resignation letter, she then went on to say, "Every day, I watch my colleagues manage student conflict through the lens of race, projecting rigid assumptions and stereotypes on students, thereby reducing them to the color of their skin. I am asked to do the same, as well as to support a curriculum for students that teaches them to project those same stereotypes and assumptions onto themselves and others. I believe such a curriculum is dehumanizing, prevents authentic connection, and undermines the moral agency of young people who are just beginning to find their way in the world." Now, what's interesting to note here is that she said that other staffers at the college were also deeply troubled by these developments, but were too terrified to speak out about them. This staffer also said that last month she attended a mandatory staff retreat focused on racial issues. She said that at this retreat, she was not comfortable answering personal questions from the facilitator about race and racial identity. However, this is what she wrote happened. Later, the facilitators told everyone present that a white person's discomfort at discussing their race is a symptom of white fragility. They said that the white person may seem like they are in distress, but that it is actually a power play. In other words, because I am white, my genuine discomfort was framed as an act of aggression. I was shamed and humiliated in front of all my colleagues. This staffer then filled out a workplace complaint, but she felt that it wasn't taken seriously enough on account of her race. She wrote that, "I was told that the civil rights law protections were not created to help people like me." She then said that she was stripped of her duties, which she suspected was a retaliation for filing her complaint. Now, by the way, this is not an isolated incident, as more and more of these cases are coming up across the country. For instance, a public school in New York City is asking parents to reflect on their whiteness, and they passed out literature that extols white traitors who dismantle institutions. As you can see, the literature came complete with this nice graph, which tracks the 8 white identities, starting from white supremacist all the way to white traitor and white abolitionist. And it's not just in schools either. Just a few days ago, a self-described whistleblower inside of Coca-Cola released images of slides which were allegedly part of the employees' online training. These are the images from the Coca-Cola whistleblower. One says, "Understanding what it means to be white, challenging what it means to be racist." Another slide reads, "To be less white is to be less oppressive, be less arrogant, be less certain, be less defensive, be less ignorant, be more humble, listen, believe, break with apathy, break with white solidarity." And this is my favorite slide. It just says, "Try to be less white." Now, to be fair and give you both sides of the story, Coca-Cola did release a public statement about these slides. Here is their statement for your reference. The video circulating on social media from a publicly available LinkedIn Learning series is not a focus of our company's curriculum. Our Better Together global learning curriculums are part of a learning plan to help build an inclusive workplace. It is comprised of a number of short vignettes, each a few minutes long. The training includes access to LinkedIn Learning on a variety of topics, including on diversity, equity, and inclusion. We will continue to refine this curriculum.
When you said labels of traitor put on any members of their own group who disagree publicly with them, were you talking about yourself?
Only as one among many. Randall Kennedy up at Harvard did a very fine article in the Harvard Law Review last June, for which he was denounced as an academic minstrel and other things because he was out of step. I mean, people who raise their heads will set off a search and destroy mission because people have a lot at stake and they're sitting on a house of cards. They have many assumptions which simply cannot be examined carefully because those assumptions will collapse and they'll fall from a very high position to a very low position. And they are not about to tolerate people questioning what they're saying.
Is there a way for you to put it in a nutshell about what people of, say, your own race say about you that they don't like what you say about
wait. I think one of the ways that the organized noisemakers have succeeded is saying that what they're saying is what their race is saying. My race is not saying that about me. Those particular individuals who are a small minority themselves within the black community, who have a vested interest in many of these programs, they are saying that. I think that if you went back, into the 60s, you'd find people with different views like Martin Luther King or Malcolm X. But I think that both those men believed in what they said. Whereas today, you have people who are simply professional hustlers. And again, this is not peculiar to blacks or peculiar to the United States or even peculiar to racial issues. That organizations typically, many movements are set off by idealistic people who want to promote some good for mankind or for some group. But as time goes by and as they succeed, they'll be followed by people who can use these things for their own self-interest. I hope that people will start to re-examine some of the dogmas about race that have been unthinkingly repeated for a very long time by people who compliment themselves for being thinking people. The very notion that you would expect groups to be evenly represented is staggering when you realize the tremendous difference in backgrounds from which all groups come. When you realize that cultures tend to endure over a period of time beyond a single generation. And so there's no reason to think that groups who come from Germany and Ireland to the United States are going to be all the same in a generation or two, because they're not. And still less people who come from more distant cultures, from Asia, from Africa, from other parts of the world. That's nonsense. Nowhere in the world do you find this evenness that people use as a norm. And I find it fascinating that they will hold up as a norm something that has never been seen on this planet. and regard as an anomaly, something that is seen in country after country.